The rain hammered against the hospital windows with such force I thought the glass might shatter. Each droplet seemed to echo the pounding in my chest as I held my son's small hand, his fingers cold and trembling in mine. The emergency room smelled of antiseptic and something else. Fear, maybe, or desperation. I couldn't tell anymore. These past 5 years had dulled my ability to distinguish between the two. "Mama, my tummy hurts," Luca whimpered, his voice so small it barely rose above the chaos around us. His dark curls were plastered to his forehead with sweat, and his olive skin had taken on a grayish pallor that made my stomach twist. "I know, baby. I know." I brushed his hair back, my fingers shaking. "The doctor will see you soon." But soon wasn't soon enough. The waiting room was packed with people in various states of distress, and we'd already been here for an hour. I'd called in sick to my 3rd shift at the diner, which meant no tips tonight, which meant the rent would be late again. The math of survival never stopped calculating in my head, even when my 5-year-old was burning up with fever. I pressed my lips to his forehead. Still hot. Too hot. "Excuse me." A nurse appeared, her expression harried. "We are understaffed tonight. It's going to be at least another hour." He's had a fever of 103 for 6 hours, I said, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. "He can barely keep water down. I understand, but please." The word came out broken, and I hated myself for it. Hated that I'd been reduced to begging in a hospital waiting room while my child suffered. "Please, just look at him." The nurse's expression softened slightly, but she shook her head. "I'm sorry. There's a priority system. Unless he stops breathing or... He's 5 years old. Ma'am, I need you to calm down. Calm down." As if I hadn't spent the last 5 years being calm, being invisible, being nothing more than a ghost moving through a life I barely recognized as my own. I sank back into the plastic chair, pulling Luca closer. He whimpered again, and I felt something inside me crack a little more. This was supposed to be better. Leaving him, leaving that life, was supposed to make everything better. But here I was, unable to afford proper health care for my son, working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads in a neighborhood where I triple-checked the locks every night. The automatic doors whooshed open, and a gust of wind carried in the scent of expensive cologne and rain. I didn't look up. I'd learned not to look at people who moved with that kind of confidence, that kind of presence. They existed in a different world, one I'd left behind. But then the waiting room changed. The air itself seemed to shift, growing heavier, more charged. Conversations dropped to whispers, then silence. Even the crying baby 2 rows over seemed to quiet. I felt it before I saw anything. That familiar prickling at the back of my neck, the one that used to warn me when he was near. My body recognized the danger before my mind could catch up. No, it couldn't be. I kept my eyes fixed on Luca, on the small rise and fall of his chest, on anything except the presence that now commanded the entire room. But I could hear them. Footsteps, multiple sets, the quiet efficiency of people who knew how to move as a unit, the subtle rustle of expensive fabric. And underneath it all, a voice I'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Clear the private wing. Now. Deep. Authoritative. A voice that expected instant obedience and always received it. My heart stopped. Then started again. Too fast. Too hard. My fingers tightened around Luca's hand until he squirmed. "Mama, you're hurting me." "Sorry, baby. Sorry." I loosened my grip but couldn't bring myself to let go entirely. Protection or restraint, I wasn't sure which impulse was stronger. "Sir, you can't just..." The nurse from before, but her voice had changed. Higher, nervous. "Dr. Chen, get him on the phone. Tell him Dante Moretti is here and requires his immediate attention. Dante Moretti." The name hung in the air like a curse, like a prayer, like everything I'd run from. I made the mistake of looking up. He stood in the center of the waiting room, surrounded by 4 men in dark suits who scanned the space with practiced vigilance. But I barely noticed them. My entire focus narrowed to him. The man I'd married at 19, divorced at 23, and spent every day since trying to erase from my memory. 5 years hadn't diminished him. If anything, He seemed larger, more imposing. The sharp lines of his face were harder now, his jaw more defined. His black hair was shorter than I remembered, pushed back from his forehead in a way that emphasized the cold intensity of his dark eyes. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, and despite the late hour and the rain, he looked immaculate, untouchable. A white bandage wrapped around his left forearm, visible where his sleeve had been rolled up. Blood had seeped through in a small crimson bloom. He was injured. Dante Moretti, the man I'd never seen show weakness, was bleeding. And then his eyes swept the room. I dropped my gaze immediately, instinctively hunching my shoulders, making myself smaller. Hide. The imperative screamed through every nerve. I pulled Luca closer, angling my body to shield him, and prayed that 5 years had changed me enough, that exhaustion and poverty had rendered me as invisible as I felt. Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't. The private wing is being prepared, Mr. Moretti. A different voice. Male, obsequious, probably the hospital administrator. If you'll just follow me, who else is here tonight? Dante's question cut through the air like a blade. Any other admissions I should be aware of? Sir, I don't understand. Security footage. Who came in before me in the last 2 hours? My blood turned to ice. He was checking. Of course he was checking. Dante never entered any space without knowing exactly who occupied it, who might pose a threat, who might need to be eliminated. Old habits, old paranoia, the life we'd lived, the life I'd escaped. Mr. Moretti, with all due respect, I can't share patient information. Marco. Just the name. Quiet. Almost gentle. But one of the suited men stepped forward, and the administrator's protest died in his throat. Of course, right away. I'll have the records pulled immediately. My chest constricted. The walls seemed to close in. If he saw my name on those records, if he knew Luca was here. I told him I'd had a miscarriage 6 months into our marriage, when the violence had escalated, when the bodies had started piling up, when I'd realized that the man I'd loved was buried so deep beneath the monster that I'd never find him again. I'd lied. I told him I lost the baby, and 2 weeks later, I disappeared with the help of a women's shelter and a caseworker who'd falsified documents. Luca had never existed in Dante's world. He was my secret, my reason for living, my beautiful, perfect son, who would never know the darkness of his father's empire. But now we were in the same building, breathing the same air, and any moment, Dante would know. Mama? Luca's voice pulled me back. His eyes were glassy with fever, but he was looking at me with confusion. Why are you shaking? I'm okay, baby. Just cold. You're lying. He said it matter-of-factly, the way only children can. You're scared. Smart boy. Too smart. Luca Rossi? A nurse appeared, reading from a clipboard. Her voice carried across the waiting room. No. No. Dante's head turned. Not quickly. Not obviously. But I saw it, that predatory shift of attention, the way a wolf catches a scent on the wind. Rossi had been my maiden name, the name I'd reclaimed after the divorce, the name I'd given my son to keep him safe. But Dante knew that name. He'd whispered it against my skin on our wedding night, told me I'd never need it again, that I was Moretti now and forever. I stood on shaking legs, lifting Luca into my arms even though he was getting too big for it. His weight grounded me, reminded me why I had to move, had to get out of Dante's line of sight before. This way, please, the nurse said, gesturing toward the hallway. I kept my head down, my hair falling forward like a curtain. Moved quickly, but not too quickly. Didn't run. Running attracted attention. I'd learned that the hard way. We were almost to the hallway, almost safe. Wait. The single word stopped everyone. Nurses. Patients. The woman at the reception desk with her hand frozen over her keyboard. Even Luca went still in my arms. I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. My feet kept moving, carrying us toward the hallway, toward safety, toward the woman with the child. Stop her. One of the suited men moved, blocking the hallway entrance with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He didn't touch me. Didn't have to. His presence alone was a wall. My arms tightened around Luca. My mind raced through options. Scream, run, fight, but this was a hospital. And these were Dante's men, and I'd learned years ago that fighting only made things worse. Slowly, so slowly, I turned around. Dante stood motionless in the center of the waiting room, but his entire body had gone rigid. His dark eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin burn. For a long moment, he didn't move, didn't speak. He just stared, and I watched as recognition, disbelief, and something darker crossed his features. Alessia. My name left his lips like a benediction, like a curse. Alessia. The room tilted. Or maybe I did. Luca's arms tightened around my neck. Sensing the danger, even if he didn't understand it, Dante took a step forward. Just one. But the men around him shifted, responding to the movement like a choreographed dance. The administrator backed away. The nurse dropped her clipboard. "Mr. Moretti, your arm," someone tried. He didn't even glance at them. His entire focus was on me, and I felt like prey caught in a trap of my own making. I should have gone to a different hospital. Should have driven the extra 30 minutes to the clinic across town. Should have done anything except bring my son here, tonight, when fate or God or the universe decided to throw us back into Dante's path. How? His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried. "How are you here?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up, my tongue felt too thick, and all I could do was hold my son and try not to collapse. Dante's gaze dropped to Luca, to the dark curls so much like his own, to the olive skin, to the small face pressed against my shoulder. I watched as he calculated. His eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched, and his hands, those dangerous, beautiful hands, curled into fists. "How old?" The question came out rough, raw. "Sir, your injury requires immediate." The doctor who'd appeared was younger, nervous, clearly desperate to get his important patient treated. "How old?" Dante's eyes never left Luca. I found my voice, though it came out broken. 5. The number hung between us. 5 years since I'd left. 5 years since I'd told him I'd miscarried. 5 years of lies that were now unraveling with each second he stared at my son, at his son. "Mama?" Luca lifted his head, looking at the man who commanded the room. "Who is that?" The silence stretched like a blade against my throat. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think beyond the primal need to protect Luca from the truth that was crashing down around us. Dante's face had gone pale beneath his olive complexion, his knuckles white where his fists clenched at his sides. "Who is that, Mama?" Luca asked again, louder this time, his fever-bright eyes fixed on the stranger who stared at him like he'd seen a ghost. "No one, baby. Just..." My voice cracked. "Just someone Mama used to know. Used to know." Dante repeated the words like they were poison. His chest rose and fell with controlled breaths, but I could see the rage building beneath the surface. 5 years ago, I would have cowered. Now, I just held my son tighter and met his gaze with every ounce of strength I had left. "Mr. Moretti, please." The doctor tried again, gesturing toward the private wing. "Your wound. Get out." Dante's voice dropped to that dangerous quietness I remembered too well. "Everyone out. Clear this wing. Now." The waiting room erupted into controlled chaos. The administrator started ushering patients toward a different entrance. Nurses scrambled to redirect traffic. And within minutes, we were alone. Me, Luca, Dante, and his 4 shadows, who'd positioned themselves at every exit. No escape. "Dante, please." I hated the tremor in my voice. "He's sick. He needs a doctor. Just let you?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let you what, Alessia? Disappear again? Take my son?" His voice broke on the word. Take my son and vanish for another 5 years? Luca's body tensed against mine. He was smart enough to understand danger even through his fever. "Mama, I'm scared." "It's okay, baby. Everything's okay." The lie tasted bitter. Dante moved then, closing the distance between us in 3 long strides. I stumbled backward, but there was nowhere to go. His men had us surrounded, and the wall was cold against my back. He stopped just inches away, close enough that I could smell the rain on his clothes. the copper scent of blood, the familiar cologne that used to make me feel safe. His eyes, God, those eyes, swept over Luca with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "Look at me." A command, not a request. I tilted my chin up, refusing to cower even as my heart hammered against my ribs. "You told me you lost the baby." His words came out precise, measured, the calm before the storm. "You cried in my arms and told me our child was gone. I held you while you grieved. He stopped, his jaw working. "I believed you. I had to. You had to." He repeated it flatly. "You had to lie to me. You had to steal my son. You had to make me think." His hand came up, and I flinched instinctively. He froze. Something flickered across his face, pain maybe, or a recognition of what I'd become, what he'd made me become. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered his hand. "I would never hurt you." The words came out hoarse. You killed a man in our kitchen." The memory burst out before I could stop it. "I came downstairs to get water, and there was blood everywhere, and you—" My voice broke. "You looked at me and told me to go back to bed like it was nothing. He betrayed the family. He would have killed us both if there was always a reason." I clutched Luca tighter, feeling him shake against me. Always a justification. Always one more body, one more threat, one more nightmare I had to pretend was normal. "So you ran." His voice had gone cold again. "You ran and you took—" His gaze dropped to Luca, and something raw and broken crossed his features. "You took everything. I took myself. I took my son. I gave him a life where he doesn't have to see violence, where he doesn't have to learn that people are disposable, where he grows up without a father." Dante's hand moved to Luca's face, and I jerked away, but not fast enough. His fingers brushed against Luca's feverish cheek with a gentleness that made my chest ache. "Where he's sick, and you can't afford proper care. Where you work yourself to death trying to survive while He stopped, his expression hardening. "While I have everything he could ever need. Except safety." I met his eyes. "Except a normal life. Except the chance to be a child instead of the heir to a crime empire. He's my blood. He's my son. He's mine." The words exploded out of him, echoing through the empty waiting room. Luca whimpered, and Dante visibly struggled to control himself. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, but no less intense. 5 years, Alessia. 5 years you kept him from me. 5 years of birthdays, first words, first steps. His hand curled into a fist again. "Did you even think about what you were taking from me?" "Every single day." The admission came out strangled. "Every single day I thought about it. But I also thought about coming home to find you dead. I thought about men breaking into our house to get to you. I thought about Luca growing up thinking violence is love and power is everything." Tears burned my eyes. "I thought about what that world did to you, and I couldn't. I wouldn't let it have him too." Dante stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the battle raging behind his eyes. The man who'd once promised to give me the world warring with the monster who'd built an empire on blood and fear. Marco. He didn't turn. Didn't break eye contact with me. "Get Dr. Chen. Tell him I need him to examine a child. 5 years old. High fever. Now." "Sir, your injury, now." One of the suited men disappeared down the hallway. The others remained at their posts, silent sentinels guarding their king. "You can't just—" I started. "I can do anything I want." The words weren't a boast, just a statement of fact. "You know that. You've always known that." He gestured toward a row of chairs. "Sit, let the doctor examine him, then we'll talk." "There's nothing to talk about. There's 5 years to talk about." His voice dropped to that dangerous softness again. 5 years of lies. 5 years of my son growing up without me. 5 years of you living like this. He gestured at my worn coat, my scuffed shoes, the exhaustion I couldn't hide. "When you could have had everything, I had everything." I held Luca closer. "I have everything. You have poverty. You have fear. You have a sick child you can't afford to treat." He leaned in, close enough that his breath ghosted across my cheek. "You have nothing, Alessia, but that ends tonight." The threat, or promise, hung in the air between us. Before I could respond, footsteps echoed down the hallway, and Dr. Chen appeared, his expression professionally neutral, despite being summoned by a man everyone knew was dangerous. "Mr. Moretti," he nodded respectfully. "I understand there's a child who needs examination?" "My son." Dante said the words like he was claiming territory. "Examine him. Tell me what's wrong, Doctor." Chen's gaze flickered to me, seeking confirmation or permission. But Dante moved to block his view. The message was clear. He was in charge now. My permission was irrelevant. "Mama?" Luca's voice was small, confused. "What's happening?" "It's okay, baby. The doctor's going to make you feel better." "Come with me, young man." Dr. Chen smiled kindly, gesturing toward an examination room. "Let's see what's bothering you." I moved to follow, but Dante's hand closed around my wrist. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop me. His touch burned through my skin, familiar and terrifying all at once. "Let go. We need to talk. My son needs me. Our son." He corrected quietly. "Our son needs medical attention, which he's getting. You and I need to discuss how this is going to work." "There's no how this works. We're leaving as soon as—" "You're not leaving." The words were absolute, final. "Not tonight, not tomorrow, not ever again." Ice flooded my veins. "You can't keep me here." "Can't I?" His thumb traced a circle on the inside of my wrist, and I hated that my body still remembered his touch, still responded to it. "You walked back into my life tonight, Alessia. You brought my son into this hospital where anyone could have seen him, recognized him, used him to get to me." His grip tightened slightly. "Do you have any idea how many enemies I have? How many people would kill a child just to hurt me? Which is exactly why I left. And now you're back." He pulled me closer, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the small scar above his eyebrow from a fight when he was 17. "Now he exists. Now people will know. And if you think I'm going to let you walk out that door with my son, unprotected, vulnerable—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "You don't know me at all anymore if you think that's possible. I know exactly who you are." I tried to pull away, but his hold was unbreakable. "You're a man who takes what he wants, who destroys anything in his way, who loved you." The words stopped me cold. "Who mourned you, who spent 5 years believing I'd failed to protect our child." His free hand came up to my face, and this time I couldn't flinch away. His fingers traced my cheekbone with a gentleness that felt like violence. "Who's been half dead inside since you left?" "Don't." My voice broke. "Don't do this." "Do what? Tell you the truth?" His forehead dropped to mine, and I felt the tremor run through him. "I looked for you. For months. Years. I had every resource at my disposal searching for any sign of you, and nothing. You vanished like you'd never existed, because I had to. Because staying meant being mine." He pulled back enough to look at me, "And you couldn't handle that. Being yours meant being owned. It meant watching you become someone I didn't recognize. It meant—" The examination room door opened, and Dr. Chen emerged with Luca in his arms. My son looked smaller somehow, more fragile, and my maternal instinct overrode everything else. I wrenched my wrist from Dante's grip and rushed to take him. "He has a severe kidney infection," Dr. Chen explained, his expression serious. "He needs IV antibiotics immediately. I'd like to admit him for at least 48 hours to monitor his progress." "No." The word came out sharp. "We can't afford— Cost is irrelevant." Dante stepped beside me, his hand settling on Luca's back in a gesture so natural it made my throat tight. "Admit him. Private room. Whatever he needs. Dante. Whatever. He needs." Each word was punctuated with steel. "And I want security on his room. No one in or out without my approval." Dr. Chen nodded, understanding the unspoken command. In this city, everyone knew what Dante Moretti's protection meant. "I'll arrange everything immediately," he hesitated, glancing at Dante's bloodied sleeve. "Sir, your arm is fine. Take care of my son first." "My son." He kept saying it like he was branding the words into reality, And maybe he was. Within minutes, we were being ushered into a private room that looked more like a luxury hotel suite than a hospital. Luca was settled into a bed with fresh sheets, and a nurse began setting up the IV with practiced efficiency. I sat beside him, holding his hand, while Dante stood at the window like a dark sentinel. "Mama, I don't like the needle," Luca whimpered as the nurse inserted the IV. "I know, baby, but it'll make you feel better. Just squeeze my hand." "Brave boy." The nurse smiled at him. "You're doing great." Dante turned from the window, and I watched him approach the bed with careful, measured steps. He looked at Luca like he was something precious and breakable, and I saw his hands tremble slightly before he shoved them into his pockets. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. Luca looked at me for permission, and I nodded numbly. "Luca." "Luca." Dante repeated it, and I heard the catch in his voice. "That's a strong name. Mama gave it to me. It means light." Something flickered across Dante's face. Recognition, perhaps, of the meaning. Of the fact that I'd named our son after the one thing his world lacked, light. "Your mama is very wise." His eyes met mine over Luca's head, and the intensity in them made my breath catch. "She always has been." The nurse finished with the IV and stepped back. "He should rest now. The antibiotics will work quickly, but he needs sleep." As if on cue, Luca's eyes began to droop. The fever and exhaustion were finally catching up to him now that the adrenaline had faded. I brushed his hair back, humming softly until his breathing evened out. Only then did I look up to find Dante watching us with an expression I couldn't decipher. Hunger, maybe. Longing. Or perhaps just the cold calculation of a man who'd found something valuable he thought he'd lost. "We need to talk." He gestured toward the door, outside. "I'm not leaving him. Marco will stay with him. No one gets in or out." He moved closer, his voice dropping. "You and I are going to have a conversation about what happens next, and we're not doing it where he might wake up and hear." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to stay glued to Luca's side, but I could see the determination in Dante's eyes. This conversation was happening whether I wanted it or not. Reluctantly, I stood, casting one last look at my sleeping son before following Dante into the hallway. He led me to an empty consultation room and closed the door behind us. The click of the lock felt like a death sentence. "You can't keep us here," I said before he could speak. "I can. I will." He leaned against the door, blocking my only exit. "But let's start with something simpler. Why come back? Why risk coming to this hospital when you know I use it? When you know—" "I didn't know." The words burst out. "I didn't know you'd be here tonight. He was sick, and this was the closest hospital, and I was desperate." I wrapped my arms around myself. "I never wanted you to find us. Find you." He pushed off the door, stalking toward me. "You're talking like you're prey, Alessia. Like I'm some kind of predator hunting you. Aren't you?" I backed up until I hit the desk. "You've spent this whole night backing me into corners, giving orders, making decisions without asking what I want. That's exactly what you always did. That's exactly why I left." He stopped just inches away, his hands coming down on either side of me, caging me in. "What you want," he said softly, dangerously, "is to raise my son in poverty while you work yourself to death. What you want is to keep him from me, from his heritage, from everything he deserves. So forgive me if I don't particularly care about what you want right now." "And what do you want?" I challenged, meeting his gaze. "Because if you think I'm going to play happy family, if you think you can just slot back into our lives like the last 5 years never happened, what I want," he interrupted, his voice dropping to a whisper, "is to understand how you could keep this from me. How you could let me believe our child was dead while you raised him alone." His hand came up to my face, and despite everything, I couldn't make myself pull away. "What I want is to know if you ever loved me at all, or if it was all a lie from the beginning." The question hung between us, heavy with 5 years of grief and rage and something darker. Something that felt dangerously like the ember of what we'd once had, still burning beneath the ashes. "I loved you so much it destroyed me," I whispered. "I loved you until I couldn't recognize myself anymore, until I realized that loving you meant losing everything else, including our son if I stayed. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt the tremor in his touch. And now? Now I'm terrified, I admitted. Because I see the way you look at him, and I know you'll never let us go. And I don't know if I have the strength to fight you anymore. Then don't. He leaned in, his lips brushing against my ear. Don't fight me, Alessia. Come home. Let me protect you both. Let me own us. I turned my head to meet his eyes. Because that's what it would be, Dante. You don't know how to love without possessing. Maybe not. His hand slid down to my throat, not squeezing, just resting there like a collar, like a claim. But I know how to keep what's mine safe. And you, both of you, are mine. You always have been. The door burst open, and one of his men appeared, his expression urgent. Sir, we have a situation. Giovanni's crew knows you're here. They're moving. Dante's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The vulnerable man disappeared, replaced by the cold, calculating Mafia boss. His hand dropped from my throat as he turned. How many? At least 8, maybe more. They're surrounding the building. My blood ran cold. Luca is safe. Dante's voice was absolute. Marco, get 4 more men to that room. No one gets near my son. No one. He turned back to me. You stay here. Don't move. Don't open this door for anyone except me. Understand? What's happening? What's always happening in my world? His expression was grim. War. And then he was gone, leaving me alone in the consultation room with the terrible understanding that by walking into this hospital tonight, I hadn't just revealed Luca's existence to his father. I'd painted a target on both our backs. The minutes crawled by like hours. I pressed my ear against the door, straining to hear anything beyond the thundering of my own heartbeat. Distant shouts echoed through the corridors, followed by the unmistakable sound of gunfire, muffled, but close enough to make my knees weak. Luca. Every maternal instinct screamed at me to run to him, to throw my body between him and whatever danger lurked outside. But Dante's command held me frozen. Stay here. Don't move. I hated that I was listening. Hated that after 5 years of freedom I'd fallen back into the pattern of obedience so easily. More gunshots. Closer this time. My hand shook as I grabbed the nearest object. A heavy medical textbook from the desk. Pathetic defense against guns, but it was something. I positioned myself behind the door, textbook raised, and waited. The doorknob turned. Don't move or I'll... The words died in my throat as Dante pushed inside, his suit jacket gone, his white shirt splattered with blood. Fresh blood. Not his own, I didn't think, but I couldn't be sure. Are you hurt? The question escaped before I could stop it. He looked at me, really looked at me, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, that I'd asked. That I still cared enough to ask. No. He closed the door behind him, locking it again. Giovanni's men are contained, 3 dead, 5 in custody. I set down the textbook with trembling hands. And this is the life you want for Luca? Shootouts in hospitals? Bodies in hallways? This is the life we have. He moved closer, and I could smell the cordite on his clothes, the metallic tang of blood. Giovanni found out about you, about the boy. Word travels fast in our world. He's not the boy. He's Luca, your son. The words tasted strange on my tongue, and if people already know, then we're past the point of hiding. He reached for me, his hand cupping my face with startling gentleness given what he'd just done. Do you understand now? Do you see why you can't just walk away? Every enemy I have will be looking for him, for you, to use you against me. Then let us disappear again. Give us money, new identities. No, the word was absolute. I lost you once. I mourned a son I thought was dead. I'm not losing either of you again. So what then? I pushed his hand away, anger rising to replace the fear. You keep us locked in some compound, prisoners in a gilded cage. I keep you safe. His jaw clenched. I keep my son alive. And yes, if that means you lose some of your precious freedom, then that's the price you'll pay for lying to me for 5 years. You don't get to punish me for protecting him from you. From me? His voice rose, and I saw the crack in his composure. I would die for that boy. I would burn this entire city down to keep him safe. And you think... He stopped, visibly struggling for control. You think I'm the threat? You're the reason there is a threat. I shot back. If you weren't who you are, if you hadn't chosen this life, I didn't choose it. I was born into it. He grabbed my shoulders, not hard, but firm enough to make me meet his eyes. My father, his father before him. This is what we are. And Luca is part of that whether you like it or not. The moment he was conceived, his fate was sealed. No. Tears burned my eyes. No. I won't let... He pulled me closer, up to you anymore, and I felt the tremor in his hands. He's mine, Alessia. My blood, my heir, and I will do whatever it takes to protect him. Even from you, if necessary. The threat hung between us. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. We need to move. Now. This hospital isn't secure. Luca needs... Dr. Chen is arranging transport. Private ambulance. My men as escorts. We're taking him to my estate. He saw my expression, and continued before I could protest. It has a full medical facility. Better than anything here. He'll have round-the-clock care. Your estate. The words felt like a noose tightening. The same place where you'll both be safe. He moved to the door, his hand on the knob. This isn't a negotiation. You can walk out of here with me willingly, or I can have Marco carry you. Your choice. I wanted to fight. Every fiber of my being screamed to resist. But the sound of those gunshots still echoed in my ears, and the image of Luca alone and vulnerable made the decision for me. Fine. The word tasted like defeat, but this doesn't mean... It means whatever I say it means. He opened the door, checking the hallway before gesturing me forward. Stay close to me. Don't speak to anyone. Don't look at anything. Just walk. The hallway was chaos barely contained. Hospital staff huddled in doorways, security guards spoke in urgent whispers, and I caught glimpses of what looked like crime scene tape being unfurled. Dante's hand settled on the small of my back, proprietary and protective all at once, guiding me through the maze of corridors. We reached Luca's room to find Marco and 3 other men positioned like sentries. Inside, Dr. Chen was checking Luca's IV while a nurse packed supplies into bags. Luca was awake, his eyes wide and frightened. Mama? I'm here, baby. I rushed to his side, gathering him into my arms. I'm right here. There were loud noises. I was scared. I know. I kissed his forehead. But we're leaving now, going somewhere safer. Where? His gaze drifted past me to Dante, who stood in the doorway like a dark guardian. Is he coming too? The question was so innocent, so trusting, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Luca didn't know, didn't understand. To him, Dante was just a stranger who happened to be there. Yes. Dante's voice was rough as he approached. I'm coming too. I'm going to make sure you and your mama are safe. Is that okay? Luca studied him with the serious consideration only children possess. Are you a doctor? No. A policeman? Something dark flickered across Dante's face. No. Then what are you? The question hung in the air. I saw Dante struggle with it, saw the carefully constructed walls he'd built around himself, tested by the innocent curiosity of a 5-year-old boy who didn't know he was talking to his father. I'm someone who cares about your mama very much, he finally said. And now I care about you too. Oh. Luca seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay then. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. The ambulance is ready. I'll accompany you to ensure continuity of care. Good. Dante nodded to Marco. 6-vehicle convoy. Snipers on the roof until we're clear. No one follows us. The efficiency was terrifying. Within minutes, Luca was being transferred to a stretcher, still connected to his IV. I stayed beside him, holding his hand while Dante orchestrated the movement with military precision. The private ambulance was more like a mobile hospital room, state-of-the-art equipment, comfortable seating, everything you could possibly need. Doctor. Chen took position near Luca's stretcher while I sat on the small bench, and Dante settled across from me, his dark eyes never leaving us. As we pulled away from the hospital, I watched through the tinted windows as the building disappeared behind us. Each mile that passed felt like another link in the chain binding us back to Dante's world. "How long?" I asked quietly, my fingers still interlaced with Luca's. "How long are you planning to keep us at your estate?" "As long as necessary." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer you're getting." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You need to understand something, Alessia. Giovanni's men came to that hospital to kill me. When they found out about you, about Luca, that changed everything. You're not just witnesses, you're leverage, you're targets. Because of you. Yes." He didn't deny it. "Because of me. Because of what I am. And I can hate that all you want, but it doesn't change the reality. My son, our son, is now in danger because he exists. And until I eliminate that threat permanently, neither of you leaves my sight. You can't just... I can. I will." His hand shot out, gripping my knee. Not hard, but firm enough to emphasize his words. "You don't get to make decisions anymore, Alessia. You lost that privilege when you stole 5 years from me. Now I'm in control. Now I decide what's best for my family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "Is that what you think we are?" "That's what we've always been." His thumb traced a circle on my knee, the gesture so familiar it made my breath catch. "You can be angry. You can hate me. But you're still my wife, ex-wife. We'll see about that." The promise in his voice sent ice through my veins. Divorce papers can be undone, especially when they were obtained under false pretenses. "You can't. I can do anything I want." He leaned back, his expression unreadable. "You're about to remember exactly how much power I have, cara mia. And this time, you're not leaving." The endearment, my dear, was like a knife to the heart. He hadn't called me that since the early days of our marriage, when I'd still believed in the possibility of happiness, before the violence had eclipsed everything else. Luca stirred beside me, his hand tightening around mine. "Mama, where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, baby." "Will there be toys?" Despite everything, I felt a small smile tug at my lips. Even sick and scared, he was still a child. "I'm sure there will be. Anything you want." Dante's voice was soft as he looked at Luca. "Toys, games, books, a room of your own, a yard to play in once you're feeling better." "Really?" Luca's eyes lit up despite his fever. "A yard? We don't have a yard at our apartment. Mama says we can't afford one." I felt the judgment in Dante's gaze, the unspoken accusation. "See what you've reduced him to? See what he could have had? You'll have everything now," Dante promised, and I heard the vow beneath the words. "Everything I should have given him from the beginning if you hadn't stolen him from me." The rest of the ride passed in tense silence. I watched the city give way to suburbs, then to countryside, and finally to the massive iron gates that marked the entrance to Dante's estate. My stomach twisted as they swung open, revealing the long driveway lined with trees. I'd been here before, lived here actually, for the brief period of our marriage, but it looked different now. More fortified, more prison-like. High walls topped with security cameras, guard posts at strategic points. This wasn't just a home. It was a fortress. The ambulance pulled up to the main house, and I saw at least a dozen men positioned around the property. All armed, all watching. "Welcome home," Dante said quietly, and the words felt like a life sentence. Dr. Chen supervised Luca's transfer into the house, directing staff to set up the medical equipment in what I assumed was the prepared room. I followed numbly, still holding Luca's hand, as we were led through marble hallways that echoed with each footstep. The room they'd prepared was enormous, easily 3 times the size of our entire apartment. A hospital bed had been set up near the windows, surrounded by monitoring equipment, but the rest of the space was furnished like a luxury bedroom. Toys lined the shelves, books filled a small case, even a television hung on the wall. "This is mine?" Luca breathed, his eyes wide despite his exhaustion. "This is yours," Dante confirmed, and I heard the satisfaction in his voice. "This is what I can give him. This is what you couldn't. As Dr. Chen and the nurses got Luca settled, Dante's hand closed around my elbow. We need to talk. Privately. I'm not leaving him. He's being cared for by medical professionals. He's safe. And you and I have things to discuss that he doesn't need to hear. Before I could protest further, Marco appeared in the doorway. Sir, the security sweep is complete. The property is locked down. Giovanni's second in command was picked up an hour ago. He's waiting for you in the south wing. Dante's expression hardened. Good. Have him prepared. The casual way he said it, have him prepared, made my blood run cold. I knew what that meant. What would happen in whatever room existed in that south wing. Dante. Stay with Luca. He released my elbow, his hand trailing down my arm before dropping away entirely. Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow? What about tonight? What are you going to... What I always do. His eyes met mine, and I saw the monster lurking beneath the surface. The man who'd ordered deaths while kissing me goodnight. I'm going to protect what's mine. By any means necessary. He turned and walked away, Marco following, and I was left standing in a gilded room that felt more like a cage than anything else. I looked at Luca, already drifting off to sleep with the fever medication in his system, and felt the walls closing in. We were trapped, both of us. And I had no idea how we'd ever escape again. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every sound in the enormous house made me jump. Footsteps in distant hallways, doors closing, the low murmur of voices discussing things I didn't want to imagine. I sat beside Luca's bed, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, and tried not to think about what Dante was doing in the south wing, tried not to remember the man I'd fallen in love with, before the violence had consumed everything good in him. Dawn broke through the windows, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. Luca's fever had broken sometime during the night, and his color looked better. Dr. Chen had checked on him twice, assuring me the antibiotics were working, that he'd make a full recovery. At least one thing was going right. The door opened quietly, and I tensed until I saw it was just a woman in her 50s, carrying a tray. She wore simple clothes and had kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Good morning, she said softly, setting the tray on a nearby table. I'm Maria. I've been with the family for 20 years. Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast. I'm not hungry. You need to eat. Her tone was gentle but firm, motherly. You can't take care of your son if you don't take care of yourself. The practical wisdom in her words made something in my chest tighten. How long had it been since someone had cared whether I ate, whether I rested? In my world of survival, those luxuries had disappeared. Thank you, I managed, and she smiled again before leaving quietly. The breakfast was elaborate. Fresh fruit, pastries, eggs cooked perfectly, coffee that smelled like heaven. Everything I couldn't afford on 3 jobs worth of salary. I hated that it tasted good, hated that part of me had missed this. The comfort, the ease of not worrying about every dollar. Mama? Luca's voice was stronger than yesterday, clearer. Where are we? Somewhere safe, baby. I moved to sit beside him, brushing his curls back. How do you feel? Better. He looked around the room with wonder. This place is huge. Are we really staying here? For a little while. And that man from the hospital, the one who looks sad when he looks at you? My breath caught. Children saw too much, understood things adults thought they'd hidden. He's an old friend of Mama's. He doesn't look like a friend. Luca's dark eyes, so much like Dante's, studied me seriously. He looks like he wants to keep you. Keep me? Like how I keep my special rock. The one I found at the park that I won't let anyone else touch. He reached for my hand. Are you his special rock? The metaphor was so childlike and yet so accurate it made my throat tight. It's complicated, baby. Is he a bad man? How did I answer that? Yes. He kills people. Yes, he runs a criminal empire. Yes, he's dangerous and possessive and everything I ran from. But also, he's your father. He loved me once, in his own twisted way. And he's the reason you're alive, because I couldn't bring myself to tell him about you when I left. Couldn't destroy him completely, even as I saved myself. He's complicated. I settled on finally, like most people. Before Luca could ask more questions, the door opened again. This time it was Dante, showered and changed into fresh clothes. Dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as little as I had. "How is he?" His gaze went immediately to Luca. "Better. The fever broke." "Good." He moved closer, and I saw the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his mouth. Whatever had happened last night had taken its toll. "Dr. Chen will be by in an hour to check on him. In the meantime," he turned to me, "we need to talk, now." "I'm not leaving. Maria will stay with him. She raised 3 children of her own. He'll be safe." His tone left no room for argument. "You and I have decisions to make." I looked at Luca, who'd already been distracted by the television remote, cartoons flickering to life on the screen. He seemed content, comfortable, safe, at least for the moment. 30 minutes, I said quietly. "That's all you get. We'll see." He led me through the house, past rooms I remembered and ones I didn't, down hallways that seemed to stretch forever. We ended up in what must have been his office. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that commanded the space. The windows overlooked the grounds, security men visible in the distance. Dante closed the door behind us and leaned against it, studying me in the morning light. "You look tired. Whose fault is that?" "Mine." He didn't deny it. "Everything that's happened is my fault. The life I chose, the enemies I made, the fact that you felt you had no choice but to run." He pushed off the door, moving to pour himself a drink despite the early hour. "I've had all night to think about that. About what kind of man drives away the woman he loves. What kind of monster makes her fear him so much she'd rather struggle alone than—" "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't try to make yourself the victim here. You chose this life. Every single day you chose violence and power over you." He turned, glass in hand. "Over us?" "Yes, I did, because I thought—" He stopped, jaw clenching. "I thought I could keep you safe. I thought if I was powerful enough, ruthless enough, no one would dare touch you. Instead, I became the thing you needed protection from." The admission hung between us. I'd expected anger, demands, threats, not this raw honesty that made him seem almost human again. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because Giovanni's man talked last night." He took a long drink. "Before he died, he told me everything. There's a price on Luca's head. $5 million to whoever brings him in alive." Ice flooded my veins. "What?" "They want leverage over me. They want to use my son to control me, to break me." His hand tightened around the glass, "and they know exactly who he is now. Your name, his name, where you lived, where you worked. Everything." Oh God. My legs gave out, and I sank into the nearest chair. "Oh God, this is why you can never leave here." He set down his glass and crouched in front of me, his hands covering mine. "Why I need you to understand that this isn't about control or possession or any of the things you think. It's about survival, Luca's survival, yours. There has to be another way, witness protection, or they'd find you in a week." His thumbs traced circles on the backs of my hands. "I have resources they don't. I have security they can't penetrate. But only here, Alessia. Only if you stay." "As what? Your prisoner?" "As my wife." The words hit like a physical blow. I jerked my hands away, standing so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "We're divorced. A piece of paper I never signed." He stood as well, and I saw the determination in his eyes. "My lawyer filed it away, forgot to process it. As far as the law is concerned, we're still married." "You—" Rage and disbelief warred inside me. "You can't just—" "I can. I did." He moved closer, backing me against the desk. "And before you start talking about annulments or forcing my hand, consider this. As my wife, you have protection. Every family in this city knows that touching you means war with the Morettis. As my son's mother, Luca has the full weight of my name, my resources, my empire behind him. Separate from me?" His expression darkened. "You're both just targets with a price tag. You're manipulating me. I'm protecting you. His hands came down on either side of me, caging me against the desk. There's a difference. Is there? I met his gaze, refusing to cower. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're using fear to force me into compliance, just like you always did. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition of the truth in my words. I never wanted you to fear me, but I did. I do. The admission came out broken. Do you know what it was like, loving you? It was like loving a storm, beautiful and terrifying and completely unpredictable. I never knew which version of you would come home. The man who'd read me poetry in bed, or the one with blood on his hands who'd look at me like I was next if I asked the wrong question. I never would have hurt you. You hurt me every day. The words exploded out. Every time you chose that life over us. Every time you came home with death in your eyes. Every time I had to pretend it was normal, that I was okay, that I wasn't slowly dying inside. Then why? His voice cracked. Why did you come to that hospital? Why not drive the extra hour to a different city, a different state? Why risk? Because he was sick. Tears burned my eyes, because I was terrified and exhausted and desperate, and I wasn't thinking about you or your enemies or anything except getting help for my son. Our son. I pushed at his chest, but he didn't move. I didn't want this. I didn't want to see you again, to feel... I stopped, the words catching in my throat. To feel what? He leaned in, his voice dropping. To feel this? His hand came up to my face and I felt myself trembling. To remember that despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the 5 years apart, some part of you still responds to me? That's just... But I couldn't finish. Couldn't lie when his thumb was tracing my cheekbone, when his eyes were dark with something that looked dangerously like the man I'd fallen in love with. Just what? Chemistry? Muscle memory? He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching mine. Or maybe it's the same thing that made me search for you for years. That made me refuse to sign those divorce papers. That makes me look at our son and see everything I should have had, everything you took from me. I took him from a life of violence. You took him from me. His voice was raw. You took my chance to be a father. To hold him as a baby, to hear his first words, to... He stopped, his jaw working. You took everything, Alessia. And now you expect me to just let you walk away again? To risk losing you both to men who'd use you to destroy me? So what's your solution? Keep us locked up forever? Make us prisoners in this, make you family? He pulled back enough to look at me, real family. Not the broken, dysfunctional version we had before, but something... He struggled for words. Something worth protecting, worth changing for. You can't change. Men like you don't change. Watch me. The words were a vow. I've already started. Giovanni's entire operation was dismantled last night. His men are either dead or scattered. The contract on Luca's life died with him. Horror washed over me. You killed him. I killed the threat to my son. No remorse in his voice. No hesitation. And I'd do it again. I'd kill 100 men if that's what it takes to keep him safe. To keep you safe. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You solve everything with violence. I solve it the only way I know how. His hands moved to my shoulders, but I'm trying to learn other ways. For Luca, for you if you'll let me, and if I won't? His expression hardened. Then you'll stay here anyway. You'll be protected, provided for, given everything you need. But you'll stay. Because I'm not losing my son again. And wherever he is, you need to be. That's non-negotiable. You can't force me to... I'm not forcing anything. His grip tightened slightly. I'm offering you a choice. Stay as my enemy, fighting me every step while I do everything in my power to keep you both alive. Or stay as my wife. Let me give you the life you should have had, and maybe... His voice dropped. Maybe we find a way to be a family. A real one. That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. It's reality. He released me, stepping back. And you have until tonight to decide. Either way, you're not leaving. But how comfortable your imprisonment is, a ghost of a smile crossed his face. That's up to you. The door opened, and Marco appeared. Sir, the security detail is set. The boy's room is under constant surveillance, and your mother called. She's heard about—" He glanced at me. "About the situation. She wants to meet them." Dante's expression shifted. Surprise, maybe, and something else. "Tell her tomorrow. We need time to settle first." "His mother?" I asked once Marco left. "You told her about Luca?" "She has eyes everywhere. She knew before I did that something had happened at the hospital." He moved to the window, his back to me. "She wants to meet her grandson, her only grandchild." The weight of that settled over me. It wasn't just Dante anymore. It was his entire family, his organization, his world. And Luca, innocent, sweet Luca, was at the center of it all now. "I need to get back to him," I said quietly. "Of course." Dante turned. "Maria will bring lunch to his room. Anything he wants. Anything you want. I want my freedom. That's the one thing I can't give you." His eyes met mine. "Not anymore. Not when giving it to you means risking everything." I left without another word, my mind spinning with impossible choices and the terrible knowledge that he was right. We couldn't leave. Not safely. Not with a price on Luca's head and enemies circling. I was trapped in the very life I'd spent 5 years escaping. And the worst part, the absolutely worst part, was that some small, traitorous corner of my heart still remembered what it was like to love Dante Moretti. Still wondered if the man I'd fallen for was buried somewhere beneath a monster. Still hoped, despite everything, that maybe he could change. I found Luca awake and playing with toys Maria had brought. Cars and action figures scattered across the bed. He looked up when I entered, his smile bright and innocent. "Mama, look what Maria gave me. She says I can keep them." "That's wonderful, baby. And she says the man, Mr. Moretti, he asked what my favorite foods are. She's making them for lunch." His excitement was pure, untainted by the reality of our situation. "Can we stay here, Mama? Please? I like it here." I looked at my son, at his joy, his comfort, his safety, and felt the walls closing in around my heart. "Yes, baby," I whispered, the words tasting like surrender. "We can stay. At least for now. At least until I figured out how to save us both from the monster who thought he was saving us instead." 3 weeks passed in a strange sort of limbo. Luca recovered fully, his energy returning as the infection cleared. He adapted to the estate with the resilience only children possess, treating the massive property like an adventure rather than a prison. He ran through the gardens, played with toys that seemed to multiply daily, and charmed every staff member he encountered. And Dante watched it all with an intensity that made my chest ache. He didn't push, didn't demand answers to the ultimatum he'd given me. Instead, he simply appeared, at breakfast, sitting quietly at the table while Luca chattered about his dreams, at dinner, asking careful questions about our day. In the evenings, standing in the doorway of Luca's room, watching as I read bedtime stories, always present, always careful, like he was afraid that one wrong move would shatter whatever fragile peace we'd found. His mother had visited on the 3rd day. Isabella Moretti was elegant and sharp-eyed, her gray hair styled perfectly, her posture regal despite her age. She'd looked at Luca with such naked longing that I'd felt my defenses crumble slightly. "He has your eyes, Dante," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her face, and his grandmother's smile. She'd been kind to me, kinder than I deserved, perhaps, given what I'd done. She didn't ask questions about why I'd left or where I'd been. She simply accepted Luca with open arms and thanked me for keeping him safe. Even if it meant keeping him away, that acceptance had cracked something inside me. Now, standing in the gardens watching Luca chase butterflies with 2 of the younger security guards who'd been assigned as his shadows, I felt the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on me. "He's happy." Dante's voice came from behind me, and I didn't jump. I'd grown accustomed to his presence again, the way he moved through space like a shadow. For now. That's all any of us get. Now. He moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel his warmth. "The future is a gamble we make every day." Spoken like a man who's survived more assassination attempts than most people have birthdays, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. 6, actually. Since you left. I turned to look at him then, really look. The shadows under his eyes had faded, but there was a weariness to him I hadn't noticed before. lines around his mouth that spoke of stress and sleepless nights. He looked older than his 32 years. "Why didn't you remarry?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "You could have. Found someone who fit your world better. Someone who wasn't you?" He shook his head. "Because there is no one else, Alessia. There never has been. Even when I thought you were gone. Even when I tried to convince myself to move on." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "You were it for me. You still are. That's not love. That's obsession. Maybe." He didn't deny it. "But it's also truth. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise." Before I could respond, Luca came running over, breathless and glowing with exertion. "Mama, did you see? I almost caught one." "I saw, baby. You were so close." He turned to Dante, and I watched my son study the man who'd become a constant presence in his life. "Mr. Moretti, do you know how to catch butterflies?" "I do." Dante crouched down to Luca's level, something he'd started doing in these past weeks, making himself smaller, less threatening. "But the secret is, you don't chase them. You let them come to you." "How?" "You stay very still, very patient. And eventually they land on you because they trust you won't hurt them." The metaphor wasn't lost on me. I saw it in the way Dante's eyes flickered to mine, the careful deliberation of his words. "Can you show me?" Luca asked eagerly. "Tomorrow, when the sun is warmer and there are more butterflies." Dante reached out, hesitating for just a moment before ruffling Luca's hair. The gesture was so natural, so fatherly, that I felt something shift in my chest. Luca beamed and ran back to his guards, already chattering about butterfly catching techniques. "You're good with him," I said quietly. "I'm trying." Dante stood, and I saw the vulnerability in his expression. "I know I've missed so much. I know I can't get those years back. But maybe," he paused, "maybe I can be there for what comes next, if you'll let me." "And what comes next, Dante? What does this future look like? Him growing up surrounded by guards and guns? Learning that violence solves problems? Becoming someone like me?" His voice was soft. "I think about that every day, about what kind of man he'll become, what kind of life he'll have." He turned to face me fully. "I've been making changes, real ones. Giovanni's territory, I didn't absorb it. I let the families divide it peacefully. 3 legitimate businesses I was using as fronts, I've pulled out, made them actually legitimate." I stared at him. "Why?" "Because I want my son to inherit something worth having, not an empire built on blood, but something—" He struggled for words. "Something he can be proud of, something that won't destroy him the way it's destroyed me. You can't just walk away from what you are." "No, but I can evolve. The Moretti name will always carry weight in this city, but maybe that weight can come from legitimate power, political influence, business acumen." His hand reached for mine, and this time I didn't pull away. "I'm not naive enough to think I can erase my past, but I can build a different future. For him, for you, if you'll help me. And the violence, the enemies, will always exist." His honesty was stark. "I can't change that, but I can minimize it, control it, keep it away from this house, from our family." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "I've already consolidated power with families that want peace. The old guard who thrived on chaos. They're being phased out or eliminated. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. You're asking me to believe in something I've never seen from you. I'm asking you to give me a chance." His other hand came up to my face. "One real chance to be the man you fell in love with. The one I buried under all the darkness, because I thought that's what strength looked like." I wanted to pull away, wanted to protect myself from the hope that was blooming treacherously in my chest, but his touch was gentle, and his eyes held something I hadn't seen in years: vulnerability. "Mama!" Luca's voice interrupted. "Come play with us." I looked at my son, then back at Dante, at the man who'd terrorized my nightmares and starred in my dreams, who'd hurt me and protected me in equal measure, who was actually trying to change. "I need time," I said finally. "Time to see if these changes are real. Time to figure out if I can trust you again. Take all the time you need." His hand dropped from my face, but he didn't release my hand. "But take it here. With me. With us as a family, Even if it's a broken one we're trying to piece back together, and if I decide I can't do this, that the risk is too great? His expression darkened slightly. Then we'll find another way. But you're not leaving, Alessia. Not you. Not Luca. That's the one thing I can't compromise on. Still making ultimatums. Still protecting what's mine. But his voice was softer now. The difference is, I'm trying to do it in a way that doesn't destroy you in the process. The weeks turned into months. Summer faded into fall, and the estate transformed into a riot of color. Luca started remote schooling with a private tutor, thrived under the attention and resources. He asked questions about Dante with increasing frequency, why he was always around, why he looked at us the way he did, why the staff called him Sir with such deference. I deflected as long as I could. But children are relentless in their pursuit of truth. It was a Tuesday afternoon in October when Luca finally cornered me. We were in the library, and he'd been unusually quiet while working on a drawing. Mama? He set down his crayons. Is Mr. Moretti my father? The question hung in the air. I'd known it was coming, had rehearsed responses in my head. But faced with my son's intelligent, questioning eyes, all my prepared speeches died. What makes you ask that? I'm not stupid. He said it matter-of-factly. I look like him. He looks at me the way Tommy's dad looks at Tommy. Like I'm the most important thing ever. And he looks at you like... He paused. Like he's sad and happy at the same time. Smart boy. Too smart. Yes, I said finally. He's your father. Luca processed this, his expression serious. Why didn't you tell me before? Because it's complicated, baby. Adult stuff that you were scared of him. Not a question, an observation. That's why we left. That's why we lived in the small apartment even though he has all this. I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. I was scared. Yes. Not of him hurting us, but of... How did I explain this to a 6-year-old? Of the life he lived, the dangerous things he did. I wanted to keep you safe, but we're safe here. He looked around the library. Aren't we? Yes. And he's trying really hard to be good, I can tell. Luca squeezed my hands. He always asks what I want for dinner. And he got me that special book about dinosaurs. Even though I only mentioned it once, and yesterday, when I had a nightmare, he sat with me until I fell back asleep. My breath caught. I hadn't known that. Hadn't known Dante had been checking on Luca at night. And he loves you, Mama. Anyone can see that. Luca, do you love him? The question was so direct, so innocent, and so impossible to answer. Did I love the man who'd terrorized my dreams? Or did I love the memory of who he'd been? Or was I falling for who he was becoming? This careful, attentive version who was trying so hard to be worthy of us? I don't know, I admitted. I loved him once, very much. But a lot has happened since then. But you could love him again? Hope lit up his face. We could be a real family, with a mom and a dad like other kids have. My heart broke a little at the longing in his voice. All this time I'd thought I was giving him everything by keeping him away from Dante's world, but I'd also taken away the one thing every child wanted. A complete family. Maybe, I whispered. Maybe we could. That evening, after Luca was asleep, I found Dante in his office. He looked up from the papers he was reviewing, surprise flickering across his face. Alessia. Is everything... He knows. I closed the door behind me. He figured it out. Asked me directly if you were his father. Dante went very still. What did you tell him? The truth. I moved closer. That you're his father. That I left because I was scared. That... I stopped. That you're trying. How did he take it? Better than I expected. I sank into the chair across from his desk. He asked if we could be a real family, like other kids have. Something raw crossed Dante's face. And what did you say? That maybe we could. I met his eyes. But that depends on you, on whether these changes you're making are real or just, they're real. He stood, moving around the desk. Do you want proof? I'll show you the business records, the alliance agreements, I don't need paperwork, Dante. I stood as well. I need to know that if I do this, if I let myself trust you again, let Luca know you as his father, let us be a family, you won't revert. You won't become the man who made me run. He was in front of me in 2 strides, his hands cupping my face with a desperation that made my breath catch. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise there won't be danger. That's always going to be part of our world. But I swear to you, on everything I am, that I will never make you fear me again. I will never choose the darkness over you. I will spend every day for the rest of my life proving that I can be the man you need, the father Luca deserves. Dante, I love you. The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. I've loved you since the moment I saw you at that charity gala, when you told me my tie was crooked and I should fire my stylist. I loved you when you walked down the aisle toward me. I loved you even when I was pushing you away with my choices, and I've loved you every single day of these 5 years, even when I thought I'd never see you again. Tears burned my eyes. You have a terrible way of showing it. I know. His forehead dropped to mine, but let me show you differently now. Let me prove that I can love you the right way. The way that builds instead of destroys. The way that gives you freedom within safety. The way that makes you want to stay instead of run. And if I can't, if the fear is too deep, then I'll wait. His thumb brushed away a tear that had escaped. I'll wait as long as it takes, because losing you once nearly destroyed me. Having you here, even if you hate me, even if you never forgive me, it's better than the alternative. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the monster to the man beneath, the one who'd been broken by his father's legacy, who'd thought violence was strength because that's all he'd been taught, who was now trying, desperately, to unlearn a lifetime of darkness. I don't hate you, I whispered. That's the problem. I should. After everything, I should hate you. But I don't. I'm just scared, I know. He pulled back slightly. So we'll go slow. We'll take it one day at a time. I kissed him. I didn't plan it. Didn't think about it. But suddenly my lips were on his, and he froze for just a heartbeat before responding with a hunger that matched my own. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me close, and I felt 5 years of longing and pain and love crash over us both. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. That was, he started. A mistake, I finished, but even I didn't believe it. No. His hand threaded through my hair. That was a beginning, or a second chance, or... He smiled, and it transformed his face into something beautiful. Or maybe just what we've both needed for 5 years. This doesn't fix everything. I know. And I still don't trust you completely. I'll earn it back. And Luca comes first, always. If I think for 1 second that this life is hurting him, then we'll change it. Together. He kissed me again, softer this time. I mean it, Alessia. Whatever it takes. We're in this together now. The months that followed weren't easy. Trust wasn't rebuilt overnight, and there were moments when the old patterns threatened to resurface, when Dante's instinct to control clashed with my need for autonomy. But he was trying. Genuinely trying. And that made all the difference. He stepped back from the more violent aspects of his business, delegating to trusted associates. He attended therapy, actual therapy, working through the trauma of his upbringing. He learned to ask instead of demand, to discuss instead of dictate. And slowly, gradually, I felt the fear loosening its grip on my heart. Luca thrived. He called Dante Papa now. Said it with the same easy affection he showed me. They had their own rituals, Saturday morning breakfasts where Dante taught him Italian phrases, evenings in the library reading together, walks through the gardens where Dante was teaching him about different plants, watching them together, seeing the gentleness Dante showed our son, the patience and love. It healed something in me I hadn't realized was broken. It was a spring morning, almost a year after that night in the hospital, when Dante found me in the gardens. I was reading while Luca played with his friends, carefully vetted children of staff members, giving him the normal childhood I'd always wanted for him. I have something for you. Dante sat beside me, and I noticed he was nervous, actually nervous. What? He pulled out a small box and my heart skipped. Before you panic, it's not what you think. Or maybe it is. I don't... He stopped, took a breath. Open it. Inside was a ring. Not the massive diamond he'd given me when we'd first married, but something simpler. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds. Elegant and understated. I know we're technically still married, he said quietly. And I know you didn't have a choice about that. So I wanted to give you one now. He took the ring out, holding it between us. Marry me, Alessia. For real this time. Not because you're trapped or scared or have no other option, but because you choose me, because you choose us, because you believe in what we're building here. Dante, I love you. His voice was steady now, sure. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You've made me better. Not perfect, not even close, but better. And our son, his voice caught. Luca is the best thing I've ever been part of creating, the best legacy I could leave, and I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of you both. So please, he met my eyes. Choose me. Choose us. Choose this life we're building together. I looked at the ring, then at Dante, then at Luca playing in the sunshine, laughing and safe and happy. I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, terrified and exhausted and alone, and the woman I was now, still cautious, still healing, but no longer running. Yes, I whispered, and watched joy transform Dante's face. Yes, I'll marry you. For real this time. He slipped the ring on my finger and kissed me with a tenderness that spoke of second chances and new beginnings. Luca saw us and came running, demanding to know what was happening, and Dante scooped him up, explaining that we were going to be a real family now. Finally, Luca declared, making us both laugh. I've been waiting forever. And standing there in the gardens, the three of us together, I realized that sometimes the path to happiness wasn't straight. Sometimes it required running away to find the strength to come back. Sometimes it required breaking apart to heal correctly. Sometimes love meant walking through fire and coming out the other side, scarred but whole. We were married again 6 months later. A small ceremony in the estate gardens, with only close family and friends. Isabella cried through the entire thing. Luca served as ring bearer and took his job very seriously. And when Dante and I exchanged vows, real ones this time, written from the heart, I meant every word. The life we built wasn't perfect. Dante's world would always carry shadows, and there were still nights when I woke up afraid. But we faced those fears together now. He kept his promises. The violence stayed away from our home. His business grew more legitimate each year, and Luca grew up knowing he was loved fiercely by both his parents. 5 years after our second wedding, watching Luca blow out candles on his 12th birthday cake, surrounded by friends and laughter and light, Dante's arm around my waist, I realized something profound. I'd spent so many years running from this life, from this man, from this love, but in the end, what I'd been running from was fear itself. Fear of being hurt. Fear of losing control. Fear of trusting in something as dangerous and unpredictable as love. But love, real love, was worth the risk. Dante leaned down, pressing a kiss to my temple, happy. Yes, I whispered back, meaning it with every fiber of my being. I'm happy. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't planning an escape route, wasn't waiting for everything to fall apart. I was just here. Present, home, with the man I loved, and the son we'd created, and the life we'd fought so hard to build. We'd walked through fire and survived. And on the other side, we'd found something worth everything we'd endured to reach it. We'd found each other. For real this time. Forever this time. And that was enough.